Get out of there. There we go. Hey, good evening, everybody. Today is Wednesday, and this is a whiteboard. That means it's time once again for Whiteboard Wednesday. Thanks for joining us here today and this wonderful Christmas season Whiteboard Wednesday. We are in the middle of talking about the Book of Revelation. I thought I'd take some time and go through the Book of Revelation. I started last week, and turns out it's going to be like a two-parter, maybe even a three-parter, depending on how much I waffle on and ramble. But we're going to continue talking about the Book of Revelation on Whiteboard Wednesday. We had a lot of questions come in about end-time stuff, and I'm trying to tackle them all. And it seems like they all revolved around the Book of Revelation. And so I thought we'd continue talking about that. The Book of Revelation. Remember, no S. No S. If you say S, it's okay. If you say Revelations, it's not bad. I might I see nobody is. If you're watching, go ahead and feel free to comment. And that helps me to know that I'm not just talking to myself. By myself. To myself. Okay. We will continue on in the Book of Revelation. Where we last left off, we were talking about one of the reasons this subject came up. Hey, it's Rick. Great. Thank you, Rick, for commenting. Great to see Rick. Actually, Rick was, I don't want to, maybe this is not anybody's business, but one of the questions came from Rick to even prompt me to talk about the Book of Revelation. And that was, we want to know about the Antichrist. And we saw last week, or no, I had to take... I was not in town for Thanksgiving. We had to take a break on Whiteboard Wednesday, but we found that the word Antichrist is not even in the Book of Revelation, but Revelation does talk about that, so we're going to look at that today. Hopefully get a lot of answers. Hopefully get a lot of questions answered today. I was going to say a lot of answers questioned. Maybe we will have a lot of answers questioned today as well. Hey, Carol, great to see Carol too. Carol helped decorate the church. I can't wait for you guys to come in and see the church on Sunday. It's all decorated up. Even online, you're going to be able to experience it. The stage looks great. The foyer looks great. It's awesome. So hey, thanks for helping out, Carol, with that. Very much appreciated. All right, enough. See, listen to me waffle on already. We want to get down to business here on Whiteboard Wednesday, and one of the things I mentioned 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to just kind of highlight again today, is one of the reasons the Book of Revelation is so confusing is because it is written in a genre that we don't read anymore. The genre of the Book of Revelation is called apocalyptic. Apocalyptic. Probably a word you've heard of. We talk, we hear about apocalypse and the apocalypse now. Maybe you saw that movie. It's called apocalyptic. It's the name we give to this, a type of genre that was very popular around the time John wrote the Book of Revelation. We have many other books that are apocalypses or that are apocalyptic from the time of Revelation, and that's why we know it was a genre. There's a whole bunch of writing around this time. The difference between the Book of Revelation is the Book of Revelation got added into the Bible, and it was added into the Bible because it was written by the Apostle John, and the early church wanted to preserve all the writings of Jesus. Well, Jesus didn't write anything, but the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of the apostles, so Jesus's first teachers, and Revelation was written by one of Jesus's first apostles, the Apostle John, and the Apostle John decided to use the genre of apocalyptic. Now, apocalyptic, what does that mean? Well, maybe you know what apocalypse means, or maybe you've heard the word, and it seems to be like a big disastrous thing, right? Originally, and the Book of Revelation, by the way, it just means, let me see if I can get this. Well, let me explain what apocalypse means. So, apocalypse, what does it mean? Originally, in the Greek, it's apocalypse. I'm not teaching a class. I got to remind myself, I'm not teaching a class. I just want to explain just want to explain the thing. But apocalyptic, the genre of apocalyptic, and what it does is it takes like things we see on Earth and gives them heavenly meaning. So it reveals the spiritual realities behind what's taking place on Earth. So let's say what's taking place on Earth is a Jewish guy getting killed by the Romans. Okay, that's what's taking place on Earth. What's taking place in the spiritual realm is something far different. What's taking place in the spiritual realm is Satan is defeated. Now, you might not see that in the earthly realm. You're going to see the ramifications of it, obviously, but you're just seeing a crucified, let's say, criminal, a crucified construction worker, which is what he is. What the apocalyptic genre does is it's a type of religious writing that is going to take events that happen on earth and explain what is going on in the spiritual realm, right? So, and the word apocalyptic means an unveiling. Like there's a curtain that we just can't see that is drawn over the spiritual realm, right? And what does apocalyptic do? It unveils the curtain. It pulls the curtain back so we can see the real meaning behind the events that we're living and the events that we're seeing. So apocalypse means a revealing. And again, that's exactly the same. That's exactly what revelation means. It's a revealing of something. So at the end of the day, that's what it is. Now, the apocalyptic genre likes to use lots of symbols. It's one of the hallmarks of the apocalyptic genre is everything's coded in symbols. Coded, maybe not. It's coated and it's coded in symbols and symbology. So before we get into the next part of our Revelation talk, I want to just read to you a couple paragraphs of another apocalyptic writing from the genre of apocalyptic that was written around the same time as Revelation. It was just like, you wouldn't go to the bookstore, but the scroll would be passed around, and someone around the time of Revelation wrote an apocalyptic version of the Book of Esther, and from the Bible. And I thought, let's read that because you can see what an apocalyptic version of the Book of Esther might sound like. So, and I want to do this because it's good for us to know the people who originally read the Book of Revelation, they had a much better and easier time of understanding it than we do because they understood how the genre works. They understood how the symbols work and everything like that. And that's what I want to talk about today. It'll help us really understand it too. Help us understand all these things. So let's read together. This is not scripture. Oop, did my thing close out? My thing might have glitched out. I think, hopefully I'm still there. It says I'm still live, but then I had a big glitch. Now here's it. This is not scripture. This is just by way of example. Hey Linda, here's an example of what apocalyptic, the kinds of things, apocalyptic, that the readers, I spelled that wrong. Hold on a second. Apocalyptic. That seems wrong too. Apocalyptic. No, sure enough, that's right. Every once in a while, you see a word every once in a while. You've read it 100 times, but then you look at it again and you go, is that spelled right? Anyway, so here is the Book of Esther, the apocalyptic version of the Book of Esther. Again, not scripture, just by way of example, just so we can see how apocalyptic literature works. And you're going to see a lot of similarities with the Book of Revelation. It's not because John's inventing this genre. He's using this genre, and he's using the same codes and symbols to put into his book. So the Book of Esther, real quick, the story of when the Jewish people were in exile in Persia, and there was a guy named Haman in the king's court. Artaxerxes was the king, and Haman wanted to exterminate all the Jews. There was another person who worked in the king's court by the name of Mordecai, and his niece or cousin Esther became the queen to the king. And Mordecai uncovered this plot that Haman was going to destroy the Jews, and Esther pleaded with the king and exposed this plot. And eventually the plot was seen for what it is, and the king had Haman killed instead of all the Jewish people killed. If you're familiar with the Book of Esther, it's very fun, very great book. Highly encourage you watch it. They made a movie about it a couple years ago. That doesn't matter. Now here's the apocalyptic version of the Book of Esther. This was written a few years before John wrote Revelation, but you'll see a lot of similarities here. So again, in Apocalypse, there's a lot to do with symbols, a lot to do with dreams, and angels appear a lot. So here it is. We'll read it together. This was Mordecai's dream. Noises and confusion, thunders and earthquake, tumult on the earth. Then 2 great dragons came forward, both ready to fight, and they roared terribly. At their roaring, every nation prepared for war to fight against the righteous nation. It was a day of darkness and gloom, of tribulation and distress, affliction and great tumult on the earth. And the whole righteous nation was troubled. They feared the evils that threatened them, and were ready to perish. Then they cried out to God, and at their outcry, as though from a tiny spring, there came a great river with abundant water. Light came, and the sun rose, and the lowly were exalted and devoured, and the lowly were exalted and devoured those held in honor. Now that's the first part of the book. Mordecai has this dream, and again, this is a rewriting of the Book of Esther that somebody did around the time of Revelation. Then later in the book, this dream is revealed. We now find out what that dream meant. And maybe this first part sounded familiar if you read Revelation. There's 2 dragons. They come forward. The whole earth prepared for war. There was a righteous nation, tumult, thunder, earthquakes, all these things. And then there was a tiny spring that became a great river. Light came, and the lowly were exalted. Okay, all this interesting imagery. How is that the Book of Esther? But again, this is the apocalyptic version of Esther. It's the genre that they used back then. Here's the meaning of it. Mordecai said, and this is the end of the book of the apocalyptic version of Esther. Mordecai said, I remembered the dream that I had concerning these matters. This is after everything took place in the Book of Esther. And none of them has failed to be fulfilled. So all of this stuff happened. Mordecai says. You say, what? When did dragons come in the Book of Esther? Where was the tiny spring? I didn't see any of that stuff. Well, he's going to explain it. He says, there was the little spring that became a river, and there was light and sun and abundant water. The river is Esther, whom the king married and made queen. The 2 dragons are Haman and myself. That's Mordecai. In the Apocalypse, he put himself in the first person. It wasn't Mordecai who actually wrote this. It was just somebody else writing it. But regardless, the 2 dragons are Haman and myself. The nations are those that gathered to destroy the name of the Jews. And my nation, this is Israel, who cried out to God and was saved. The Lord has saved his people. The Lord has rescued us from all these evils. God has done great signs and wonders that have never happened among the nations. And so, and then the book kind of ends. So I just wanted to share this again so you can see how apocalyptic work, that John is not inventing something new or fanciful, or he was some people think that he was like starving to death and seeing visions and trying to write them down. No, he's using the same symbols that everybody used, and they had similar meanings. So with that in mind, let's look at some of these symbols and see if we can't help to understand what the meanings are behind them. Now, let's see here. Where we last left off, where did we get to? We looked at the good guys of Scripture, but we didn't really get to look at the bad guys. And again, one of the questions that prompted this all is, who is this Antichrist? And the word Antichrist is in the Bible, but it's not in the book of Revelation. Remember, we looked last week, it's in the book of 1st and 2nd John. And he talks about how the Antichrist has come, and The Antichrist is here now, and there is an Antichrist that will come. Kind of this great Antichrist in the future. And the Antichrist is someone who is anti-Christ. At root what it means. But you'll notice here's the bad guys in the book of Revelation. You don't see one of these, but I do think we can line these guys up and see how it fits in with what John said in 1 John. Okay, so here's the bad guys in the book of Revelation. The big bad guy. The big bad guy in the book of Revelation is the dragon. Again, maybe that sounds familiar, that the apocalyptic version of Esther we just read mentioned a couple of dragons. But who is the dragon? John is very helpful. He wants us to know exactly who the dragon is, so there's no doubt. And so let's read real quick, and we'll find out who the dragon is. This is from chapter 12, verse 7. And John, thankfully, will sometimes interpret his symbol. So he'll use a symbol, and then he'll explain exactly what that symbol is. And that's very helpful for us who are reading it, because we don't have to guess on what that symbol might mean. So in Revelation 12, he says, "Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon." There's this guy, the dragon. "And the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough," the dragon was not strong enough, "and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled down to the earth, and his angels with him." Okay, so that's very helpful. Thank you so much, John. We're going to hear about this dragon in the book of Revelation. Who is the dragon? Satan. Same, that's that serpent. Remember that serpent in the Garden of Eden, John saying? It's the devil. It's Satan. It's the dragon. So, easy. No, nobody argues about who the dragon is in the book of Revelation. Okay, here's a couple more guys. Big bad guys from the book of Revelation. The beast from the earth and the beast from the sea. Now, the first guy that pops out is the beast from the sea. I should have switched these. These are from chapter 13. Chapter 13 mentions a beast from the sea, and then there's a beast from the earth. Now, if we're wondering who the Antichrist is, I think we can probably say it's one of these. It's one of these guys, or it's associated with one of these guys. John says he looks and he sees first a beast from the sea coming out of the earth, or coming out of the sea rather, and the dragon gives this beast all sorts of power, and it's blasphemous. It's very terrible, and this beast has horns and crowns on its horns. Very strange. We're gonna explain on what all this stuff means, but the idea is that in fact, the beast seems to be some kind of empire. I almost said umpire, but empire. Some kind of evil entity, because the horns are like kings. So the beast doesn't seem to be a person himself or herself, but he does sometimes act like a person. And so sometimes that'll be the case in the book of Revelation, where so the beast has horns. The horns are kings. Not really sure what the beast is, but maybe it's like an empire. Do you know what I mean? That would have lots of kings. And but sometimes the kings do something, and when the kings do something, John will say the beast does something. So when a king does something, it's kind of acting on behalf of the beast, if that makes sense. But the beast from the sea is the antithesis of Jesus. The beast from the sea has gotten its power from Satan and demands worship of itself. It wants all authority, it wants all worship, it wants all power, and it wants all allegiance. That's the beast from the sea. And to my money, if we're wondering about the Antichrist, this is the one. This is the one we want to wonder about here, in terms of the book of Revelation, how the book of Revelation talks about this idea of being Antichrist. It talks about this beast from the sea, and you can read about the beast from the sea in chapter 13 of Revelation. Then after the beast from the sea emerges, then there's a beast that comes out of the earth. And the beast that comes out of the earth does all these signs and wonders, and again is given power from the dragon, who is Satan, and points people to the beast from the sea. He wants people to worship also the beast from the sea. So what what it seems like John is doing is he's saying that Satan is trying to usurp God's authority. And here's how Satan works. This is pretty important, actually. Well, first, here's how, more importantly, here's how God works, right? You've got God. Let me put it this way. Oops. All right. My computer's having a hard time keeping up with me here. You've got the Father. Again, this is how God works. You got the Father, who gives authority to the Son, and then you have the Spirit, who is pointing people to the Son, and again, the Son pointing people to the Father. You've got this very clearly in the book of Revelation. Maybe we'll have a chance to kind of look at that. But the Father gives authority to the Son, and the Spirit points people to the Son. The Spirit goes out from the Father. And then in Revelation 13, we see the satanic version of this. We see what the dragon does. And the dragon, Satan, that ancient serpent, right? Satan. You're not supposed to think of a literal dragon. This is the symbology. But Satan, he operates. Well, how do I put this? He doesn't create anything of itself. He just perverts things. He just takes what God has done and he copies it and mimics it, and it makes it his own and perverts it. And so in Satan, so now in the Revelation, we see the same pattern from God now copied by Satan. The dragon gives authority to this beast that comes from the sea, and the beast that comes from the earth, again, is pointing people toward the beast from the sea, to worship it, to give it allegiance, and the beast from the sea is ultimately empowered by the dragon. It's ultimately empowered by Satan himself. So this is Satan's way of doing it. This is Satan's unholy trinity. And there's earlier in the book we read about God's trinity. So that's really what the beasts are. Is the workings of Satan in the world. And when John talks about the beast from the sea, and if we're thinking Antichrist, probably this is what you'd be thinking. The beast from the sea. This is one who demands allegiance, demands worship, is usurping the rightful authority of God for itself. And this, as you read throughout the book of Revelation, it's like either an empire or a world system or an economic power that is all encompassing. And this beast from the earth, if you've ever heard the false prophet, or in 1 Thessalonians, Paul talks about the man of lawlessness. This beast from the earth kind of fulfills that duty. So there's this. Let's go back to well, this is fine. There's this idea of a false prophet, where this person is doing signs and wonders. This is kind of like a religious entity. It's like religion gone bad. And what religion gone bad tries to do is to try to get people to have allegiance not to God, but instead to this worldly system of power. So this is like worldly power here. And ultimately this is all from Satan. I mean, we see it nowadays where there's worldly systems that try to get all your allegiance and all your worship, and everything wants to be all encompassing, and there's people that advocate for it and everything. All of it comes from Satan. It's Satan trying to usurp God's authority and usurp God's throne. And this is the big tension in the book of Revelation, is the tension between the people of God who are on the earth, living within these systems that are trying to demand, that are not trying to, but that are demanding all of their worship. And the people of God can't give the beast worship. It can't give the beast allegiance, because our allegiance is to God, is to something else. But that does not go well for the people on the earth. And I think we'll see that in a little bit here. So who else? Well, the bad guys, the four horsemen, we'll look at that in a second. And then the harlot. She's not a big character in the book, but if you want to see how some of the symbols work, let's look at the harlot. She shows up in chapter 17. And I don't know if we have time for this. She's riding the beast, and all the nations are drunk from her wine and everything, and everybody's enthralled by this woman. And in verse 9 of chapter 17, it says, "This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads of this beast that she's riding are 7 hills on which the woman sits." So one of the reasons I wanted to point this out is the 7 heads are 7 hills. Again, it's symbols, but everybody would have known back in John's day who John was talking about right now, because the city that was built on 7 hills, or the city of 7 hills, and the city was very famous for being on 7 hills and built on 7 hills, was Rome. And so there's a lot of places in the book of Revelation where John is talking in coded language, in apocalyptic language, about the situation that is going on right in their day as well. It's not as if John could come out and say, hey, Rome is this great harlot, and all the nations of the world are drunk on the wine of her adultery. That stuff gets you in huge trouble just to have that stuff. So, but if it's coded like this, it's helpful, and that's one of the reasons we have apocalyptic literature to begin with. But this idea that of the 7 hills, there's stuff like this throughout the book of Revelation where it's like, oh, this is very clearly, every single person that would have been reading this in John's time would have understood, oh yeah, city on 7 hills. Yeah, that's Rome. That's what Rome is still kind of known as, the city of 7 hills. But you can see it really obviously there. Okay, so let's see how this works now, practically speaking. We went through the bad guys. We went through the good guys. Okay, now I want to, if you're going to read the book of Revelation, you're going to need to know some of the symbols and how they work. Okay, so here's a little bit of a shotgun approach to the symbols in the book of Revelation that you're going to come across. First, I don't know, see if how do I want to do this? We'll start with well, I'm debating whether I start with numbers or symbols, because they both have meaning. We'll do the symbols first. So lots of times you're going to see in the book of Revelation horns. You're going to see horns. You're going to see eyes. And it sounds funny, but this is, again, just apocalyptic literature. Well, horns and eyes are big ones. You're going to see crowns. You're going to see... well, one of the big ones is the scroll. Almost the whole book revolves around this big scroll that's being opened. The sealed scroll. The sea. The sea is a big one. All right, real quickly here. What do these mean? Very basically, or very quickly, horns are power. So if something has lots of horns, then it's very powerful in the book of Revelation. Eyes is knowledge, or see, like, all seeing. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Eyes are knowledge. Crowns are authority. like you would think, well, that's kind of what crown symbolizes today. That one's not too hard for us to understand. Horns are power because big, powerful animals had big horns, right? So that's, I mean, maybe we don't see that correlation, but that's how the readers would have saw it. So the scroll, I'll talk about what the scroll means in a second. I'll come back to the scroll because that's a very important one. The C means chaos, typically. This kind of chaotic. God has a good ordered world. This is chaos, meaning the opposite of order. So it's what happens when God takes his hand off of things. God's creation is good and orderly. When he takes his hand off of things, how the Book of Revelation and really the Bible talks about it is the seas come in and destroy things. So the sea is not seen as a good thing in the Book of Revelation. And you see the beast coming out of the sea. It doesn't literally mean coming out of the ocean waters. It's coming out of the chaos that happens when God takes his hands off things and human beings run them. It's kind of the chaos of humanity. All right, so these are the symbols we're going to see a lot of. About numbers. Numbers are very important in the Book of Revelation. Typically, they're symbolic. You're going to see 7 a lot. You're going to see 4 a lot. You're going to see 12 a lot. I'm kind of rushing, but I'm giving you the big picture. 7 is a symbol of perfection or completeness, let's say. 4 is typically a symbol of like worldwide. If something if there's 4 of something, that means it's across the whole world. The idea is like the 4 directions, north, south, east, west. Like it's all encompassing in terms of it goes over the whole world. 12 is a number. It's like a symbol of a unity of parts or something like that. Like well, think of the calendar. There's 12 months in a year. So if there's 12 tribes of Israel. There's 12 apostles of the church. So the number 12, and you're going to see this over and over again in Revelation if you read it, it signifies that there's a whole bunch of parts of something coming together to form a whole. So why is this important? Why do I belabor this? Well, if you see something that has 7 horns in the Book of Revelation, you're not supposed to picture kind of a weird animal with 7 horns. You're not supposed to literally picture that. You're supposed to, it's because it's symbology. You're supposed to understand that whatever this animal is also representing something, but the fact that it has 7 horns means that it is all powerful. Its power is universal. If you see a beast with 7 eyes, you're not supposed to picture a weird spider-like monstrosity. You're supposed to understand whatever this beast symbolizes, it's supposed to symbolize universal or perfect knowledge. So a lot of times God will be represented as a beast with 7 eyes. Not that God literally has 7 eyes, but that he's all-knowing. That's what that means. So again, those are the big ones. Now, how is the Book of Revelation put together? We'll stop here. Let's talk about how the Book of Revelation is put together. Again, this is a shotgun approach. The structure is pretty important. It can be a confusing book, but if you see the structure, I think it's not that bad. First of all, there's a section of letters to the churches. Remember, I said last week John wrote this to 7 churches, and again, even the amount of churches, the 7 churches, is important, because it's not just to those 7 churches, right? What does the number 7 mean? It's this idea of perfection or completeness. So yes, it's written to 7 literal churches, but it's also written to the whole church, the universal church. So it's all the church. This letter is to all the church. So that's chapter 1 through 3 is those letters. Then chapters 4 and 5 is really when the book starts. I take that back. It starts at chapter 1, but the stuff we typically think of in the book of Revelation starts at chapter 4 and 5. We see God's throne room. This is where this is where I was saying when if something's an apocalyptic or a revelation, it's revealing what's going on. We're taking a peek into God's throne room, and we see what's going on there, and I'll talk about that. That's probably the most important thing in the book of Revelation. Then from chapter 6 on, we get 4 sets of 7 things. First, there's 7 seals on the scroll. So there's a big scroll in God's throne room that's presented, and it's sealed up. And it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seals on it. And then after the seals, there are 7 trumpets. I won't draw 7 trumpets. There's 1 trumpet. How's that? That's close enough. There's 7 thunders. Nobody talks about these 7 thunders. Maybe you read the book of Revelation 7 times. You go, 7 thunders? In Revelation chapter 10, it talks about the 7 thunders. And John hears the 7 thunders, and he's about to write down the 7 thunders. But the angel says, no, you don't get to write down what the 7 thunders are. And John says, oh, okay. He says, and so I sealed it up. I didn't write about it. But they're there. We just didn't get to hear about it. What are they, you say? I have no idea what the 7 thunders are. But then there are 7 bowls. Now, after this, right in the middle of it, right in the middle of the book, in chapters 12 through 4, there's an interlude. And then at the end, I wrote this too big. What if I can change how big this is? I don't think I can change how big it is. Sorry, I wrote it too big. I meant to have it all on 1 page. At the very end, you have the fall of Babylon. You have the fall of the beast. And then you have new heavens and earth. So, this is, I think, starting in 17. 17 and onward, then you get the end of the whole thing. So, those beasts, everything I was talking about, take place right in here, this little interlude here. What's going on with these 7s, this 4 sets of 7? Again, the 7 signifies it's a universal thing, and the 4 signifies it's a worldwide thing. So, a lot of people think, and I'm inclined to believe I'm inclined to believe this way: the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the 7 thunders, probably we don't know what those are, but at least the 7 seals, trumpets, and 7 bowls are all talking about the same thing. Now, I could be wrong in that, but most people I've read seem to think that the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the 7 bowls are 3 different ways of talking about the same events. So it's not as if we check off seals one by one. Then when we're done with the seals, then we're hearing from the trumpets one by one. Then when we're done with the trumpets, then we're getting the bowls one by one. It's each one corresponds to a different part of this this judgment thing that's going on, or they're different aspects to the same thing: the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. So that maybe is a helpful way to see the Book of Revelation as a whole, because it can get confusing with all this stuff. But when you realize and I think that's right, when you see it, that these are just different ways to describe it, I think it can get a lot easier. I'll close with this then. I said I'd close with this. So here's how it is, and I'll continue this. I think you're right, Rick. I'll go next week. We'll do another week. I don't need another next week off for Whiteboard Wednesday, but we'll look at it again next week, next Wednesday. But let's look in Revelation 5. Now this is right when the action is starting, so forgive me for moving your screen around a whole bunch. After John writes the letters to the churches, then we get a peek into God's throne room, and in chapter 5 we kind of see we see everybody worshiping. If you want to read Revelation 4 with these symbols in mind, you might get a better understanding of what it means when there's 4 living beasts that are worshiping at the throne of God. We realize that this just means it's all creation. There's 4 of them. All creation is there present in God's throne room. The 12 elders that are worshiping there is symbolic of the 12 parts of the church, either the 12 tribes of Israel in the Old Testament or the 12 apostles in the New Testament. So you'll see that. But then there's a problem that arises in Revelation 5, and this is where the action really starts going. Revelation 5, this is John speaking. He says, "Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals." And this person, the right hand of him who sat on the throne, this is God. He's got a scroll with 7 seals. "And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?' But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside it. I wept and I wept because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or look inside." And now, what is this scroll? The scroll is... It's hard to describe exactly, again, because John is using symbolic words, but it's something along the lines of God's purposes for creation, or God, really maybe just God's purposes for the world. So without this scroll being open, if the scroll remains shut, then life and everything we're going through and everything we've lived through has no meaning or purpose. It's like, here's God's plan. Maybe that it could be God's plans or something like that. His man or his what would it be? Yeah, his plans. Like his like, here's how I'm gonna fix. Here's how I'm working everything together. Right? Without this scroll being opened, everything in life is just meaningless. Everybody who has died for no reason and no purposes because the scroll is shut. And this is why John weeps. He says, "Oh no, everything's worthless. Everything's worthless in the end. What a terrible thing to realize, because no one can open the scroll." But what happens? It says, then one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." Now here is a person now that is able to bring about all the promises and all the fulfillment of God's creation. This person is able to do this. He's triumphed. Now, again, I said this last week or 2 weeks ago. In the book of Revelation, you hear things and then you see things. You hear things and then you see things. Here he hears what? The Lion of the tribe of Judah. He hears the Lion of the tribe of Judah has triumphed. And then he looks and sees. Who is this lion? Very interestingly, it's not a lion, it's a lamb. I saw a lamb looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne. That's with God. Standing at the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. The lamb had 7 horns, all powerful, remember, and 7 eyes, all knowing, which are the 7 spirits of God. Again, this is the perfect, complete Spirit of God that is sent out into all the earth. This is maybe the Book of Revelation's way of saying the Holy Spirit. We know, and we've said before, we have the Spirit dwelling in us, right? That's part of that 7-fold Spirit of God that has gone into all the earth, the complete Spirit of God which is in the earth right now. But why is this amazing? This lion of the tribe that John heard about, when he sees it, he sees the lion is actually a lamb that's been killed. And how has the lamb triumphed? He triumphed by being killed. That was the lamb's victory, is being killed. And the lamb is now standing at the center of the throne. And the lamb is now able to bring about all the purposes and the fulfillment of God because of the triumph of the lamb. Very cool. So that's what sets off the action of the Book of Revelation. And we see what happens when God's purposes are being revealed for his creation, when the seals start to be broke. But again, we'll look at that another day. What's the big message of the Book of Revelation, though? What I want to leave us with something. The big message is that Jesus wins. I want to take, here's better. Jesus has won. He's already done it. He's already triumphed. And the second thing, and this is when we really get into the Book of Revelation next week, the second thing is also very important. What may look like suffering and defeat to us is actually victory. We're going to see this theme over and over again in the Book of Revelation. The lamb looks like it was killed, but that was not defeat for the lamb. That was defeat of the dragon. The lamb looks like it was defeated, but that was not the defeat of the lamb. That was victory. That was how the lamb won. And we're going to see that that goes for God's people as well. When we see, I know it can be discouraging sometimes in the church and seeing the world and thinking, oh, this is terrible, and things are not looking good. If we were to able to peel back and see what's going on in the spiritual realms, what looks like defeat to us is actually victory because of the lamb. Now here I'm starting to preach a sermon. I don't want to preach a sermon for you guys. It's a sermon for another day. We'll continue to look at the Book of Revelation next week on Whiteboard Wednesday. If you have any questions about stuff, feel free to pop them in and we'll address them. Sorry this has been taking so long, but it's a big topic. See you next week.